Hey folks, welcome back. Oh, that was strange. Did you hear that? Did I just say welcome instead of velk? Castlevania! It's one of the spookiest video game series ever. And when I say spooky, I mean spooky, because it's not scary. I mean, look at this. It's all pixels. Who's scared of this? Castlevania is one of the oldest ongoing video game franchises. Despite the fact that it's owned by Konami, the kings of not making video games, there are like 50,000 Castlevania games. And they don't even adhere to one genre either. There are 2D platformers, RPGs, beat-em-ups, Metroidvanias. I mean, that last one's obvious because, you know, it's in the name. But regardless of how many games there are, it all started with one, Castlevania on the NES. Released in 1986, it was an immediate smash hit, and I absolutely love it. It's undoubtedly one of my favorite NES games. Now, to be fair, the list is small, but I would argue that Castlevania is one of the few NES games that holds up now just as well as it did when it came out. The controls are tight, the challenge is brutal but fair, the visuals are great, it's just an awesome game. I absolutely adore the first Castlevania. And after that, the ball kept rolling, baby. Castlevania 3 amped up the difficulty and added different playable characters. Super Castlevania 4 allowed you to whip in any direction. Symphony of the Night pioneered the Metroid style of Castlevania. Now you might notice that I missed one there. Perhaps Konami just skipped 2 as a gag and went to 3, I'm sure you thought. And unfortunately, that is not the case. In 1987, Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was released on the NES. The sequel to Konami's original Vampire Spookfest is a strange one. It's one of the most infamous video games of all time. It's been talked about a million times before. One might even say that it has a history of making people on the internet angry. But I've never played it. Played a bunch of other Castlevanias, but never this one. So buckle in and make sure to slather yourself with garlic butter, baby, because we're going to be killing us one Dracula. Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, as opposed to Castlevania 1, wherein Simon was on an adventure, I guess. Before you start the game, you get a little synopsis of the plot since Simon's last romp through Transylvania, so let's get up to speed. Prologue, step into the shadows of the Hell House. No thanks. You've arrived back here at Transylvania on business to destroy forever the curse of the evil Count Dracula. Wow, the plot of this Castlevania game involves killing Dracula? Awesome. What was the fucking point of that? Now the thing about Simon's Quest is that it's vastly different from the first Castlevania. Rather than being a side-scrolling action platformer, Simon's Quest is more of an open-ended RPG type game where you have to travel around this big world, finding items, solving puzzles, and killing monsters. Simon's goal here is to travel to 5 spooky mansions and retrieve the 5 pieces of Dracula's body so that he can, you guessed it, kill Dracula. The game starts you out in this town, which is, apparently Jova, and it's anyone's guess as to what you're supposed to do. Well, this NPC says first thing to do in this town is buy a white crystal. Now, I don't want to look like a tourist, so let's get that white crystal. Luckily, the game starts us out with 50 hearts, which is enough to buy the aforementioned crystal. So now I have that, which is good, I think. After dicking around in this town a little bit longer, I found 2 NPCs who sell you a thorn whip for 100 hearts and holy water for 50. So I guess it's time to go farm 150 hearts out of some skeletons outside of town. Whippin' skellies, baby! Hell yeah! A text box has appeared as if from nowhere! What a horrible... I gotta be honest, this is looking bad so far. Night to have a curse? Well, that's cryptic and spooky. Okay, jokes aside, here's the first big mechanic in Simon's Quest. You'll be walking around whipping stuff when suddenly nightfall comes. Everything goes dark, the music changes, and all of a sudden the enemies take more hits to kill and deal more damage. All you can do is wait it out. Even the towns aren't safe during the night because the NPCs get replaced with zombies. It's pretty cool in concept, keyword being in concept. And by word, I mean words. But I'll get into that later. Let's see a little bit more of this game. So once you've purchased your white crystal and your holy water and your thorn whip and your butterfinger, it's off to the first mansion. Well, it would seem that Dracula has figured out Simon Belmont's weakness. He can't jump that high. Well, there's no way that this is the end of the Belmont legacy, right? There's like a ton more games after this, so let's figure this out, shall we? Well, for the sake of brevity, what you're supposed to do here is pause, select the white crystal, and might I say, that is a crystal if I've ever seen one. Crystals are so often round. Good job, team. The white crystal makes a moving platform appear here, allowing you to progress through the mansion. Now you're probably thinking, how on earth was I supposed to know to do that? So now it's time to explore the mansion and find the first piece of Dracula's fragmented body. I guess you could say that Simon's quest has finally begun. It's basically what you'd expect, a big castle full of monsters for the whipping. The only real annoying thing are these invisible blocks that look exactly the same as the real blocks. Good thing I invested in that holy water back in town that nobody told me to invest in. Eventually you come across this glowing orb, and if I know anything about video games from the 80s, that's something I want to be grabbing. Well, I give up. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, obviously, the video's clearly not finished. Well, thankfully, it's not 1987 anymore, so I'll do what I do every time I cross a dead end like this, be it in video games or real life. I'll Google it. So it turns out you're supposed to find this guy who will sell you an oak stake, which you then throw at the orb, revealing the item to collect. You now possess Dracula's rib. Well, alright then. And then you just leave. That's it. You just mosey on out of the castle like nothing happened. There's no shortcut, no boss. You just collect an item and you backtrack through the whole mansion back out the way you came. And the rest of the game can pretty much be summed up by that. You travel to a town, grind hearts out of enemies, use said hearts to buy an item, use said item to get to the next mansion, rinse and repeat until Dracula's dead. But obviously there's a lot more to Simon's Quest than what lies under the surface. This is one of the most infamous and talked about NES games of all time. And let's just say, it's not talked about for the same reason as... what's an NES game that isn't a complete piece of shit? So folks, equip that white crystal. I'm not telling you why. Now, you don't have to be a genius to see that Simon's Quest is quite a lot different than the first game. Partially because I told you that verbatim earlier. Castlevania 1 is just a straight-up side-scrolling platformer. It just drops you in the level and says, walk to the right, kill skeletons, beat the boss, Bob's your uncle. Or should I say, Trevor's your uncle. I mean, he's not Simon's uncle, but, you know, give me a break. What do you want me to do? I'm working with what I got here. Simon's Quest, on the other hand, is more of an RPG-type experience. It's got a big interconnected open world, towns with NPCs that give you info, puzzles that require certain items to progress, etc. Really, the only things taken directly from the first game are the controls and also Simon's sprite. Simon controls the same as he did in the first game. His whip has a bit of a delay to it, you have just as little control over where you land after a jump, and special items are still used by pressing up and B at the same time. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, a non-linear Castlevania game with RPG elements? Sounds like we're all set for a vampire-slaying good time, muchachitos. However, this game sucks, and I'm gonna tell you why now because I know you aren't capable of thinking for yourself. But before I rip this game to shreds, I like to give credit where credit is due. Simon's Quest isn't completely barren of good things, so let's get into that. For starters, obviously, the gameplay is fun. The NES Castlevanias are on an elite list of the few NES games that are still playable today, and I think a lot of that comes down to the combat and game feel. Simon's whip has weight to it. It's not just like an immediate attack like in Mega Man or Contra. Each press of the attack button has to be timed correctly. If an enemy gets too close to you, whipping them might not be an option because you might not be able to get through the whole whipping animation. One might see this as a bad thing. I mean, your main method of attacking inherently handicaps you, but I think it adds to the challenge and immersion. The whip feels more powerful when you hit an enemy because it has extra weight to it. It feels like it made an impact. It's like Dark Souls. When weapons are given weight and the character visibly has to put some elbow grease into an attack, it makes the impact feel more, well, impactful. Same goes for Simon's jump. You can't control it in midair, so you have to be careful about where and how you jump. Also, the atmosphere is good, the graphics are spooky and really impressive for their time. It's a very visually solid game for the most part. And the very best thing about Simon's Quest, and I almost feel like I don't even need to say this because obviously it's a Castlevania game, but the music fucking rules. And other than that, I mean, that's mostly all the nice things I have to say about Simon's Quest. Being mean time! This game is so flawed in so many different ways that I don't even know where to begin, honestly. You already know this, but the objective of Simon's quest is to collect all 5 fragmented pieces of Dracula's body in order to put him back together and defeat him once and for all. To do this, Simon must travel to 5 dark manors and throw an oak stake at an orb. Seems easy enough, right? But this game is very non-linear, so it's not immediately evident where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. So logically you think, well, I guess I should ask the townspeople what to do. And herein lies the first big problem with this game. None of the things that any of the townspeople say to you make any sense at all. And I'm not talking like old-timey thou dost Shakespeare talk. I mean, the things they tell you are actively not helpful. They say things like a magic potion will destroy the wall of evil. What this is referring to is the fact that certain walls in the game can be broken by throwing holy water at them. I don't know why you couldn't say something like holy water can destroy certain walls, or something like that. Buy some garlic. It has special powers. I guess so. I mean, the garlic does make random guys appear who give you stuff if you manage to guess the exact spot that you're supposed to drop it. If only there was like a town with people who could have told me that. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in the town of Veros. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in the town of Alba. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in Berkeley Mansion. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in Veros Woods. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in Rodriguez. Clues to Dracula's riddle are in Bodley Mansion. Okay, awesome, great. So I guess the clues to Dracula's riddle are just everywhere, huh? And if all of that wasn't bad enough, sometimes the NPCs straight up lie to you. Rumor has it the ferryman in the Dead River loves garlic. No, he doesn't. In order to convince the ferryman to take you to the mansion, you have to equip Dracula's heart and talk to him. And let me tell you, nobody tells you this. There's a hint hidden in Berkeley Mansion, but what it says is destroy the curse and you'll rule Brahm's mansion. Like, what? What use is that to me? How the fuck does that translate to show the ferryman Dracula's heart to be transported to Brahm's mansion? Honestly, man, if you're gonna play Simon's Quest, which I recommend against, just do it with a walkthrough. There's no chance on earth that you'll figure out what you're supposed to do through dialogue alone. But anyway, enough about the dialogue. There's so much more shit to talk about here, believe it or not. First off is the level design. Now, to be fair, the main in-between areas aren't that bad. You just walk to the left or right, killing enemies, with the occasional forked path where you have to choose which direction to go. The most annoying parts are the towns and the mansions. The towns... oh my god. So each town generally has a church that you can pray at to regain your health, and a few NPCs that give or sell you items. The problem with the towns is that they're fucking massive, and generally only have like 4 houses max that even have anything inside of them. I don't understand why on earth these towns are so fucking huge, especially considering A, Simon walks this fast, and even more slowly up and down stairs. And B, at any moment, the night could come and make the entire town inaccessible, so you just have to sit there and wait for the full 12 years it takes for the day to come back. Look at the towns in Shovel Knight. It's just one long area, so you just have to walk to the right. Oh, Ben, but Shovel Knight came out... 27 years after Simon's Quest. Oh, Ben, you're 27. Shut up! Just shut up for once. And then there's the mansions, which, to be fair, I can forgive being so big, because they're, you know, mansions. But what I can't forgive is them being a pain in the ass. And you're probably thinking, Ben, why do you hate the mansions so much? Please give me a numbered list, so I will do that because I'm nice. 1, the invisible blocks. Every goddamn mansion is full of these illusory floors that look exactly the same as the other floor blocks. So basically, rather than just walking through the mansion like a normal person, you have to inch forward and throw holy water down to make sure that the block in front of you is in fact a block and not a hole. 2, stupid dead ends. Why are there so many dead ends in these mansions? You'll come across a situation where you have to pick one direction to go. So you go down some stairs, walk across an entire corridor, and end up at a dead end. Nothing there but some hanging corpses. What was the point? 3, there's no bosses. The first 2 mansions literally just don't have bosses at all. Your only objective is to find guy, buy steak, throw steak, backtrack, and leave. Now granted, the last 3 mansions do have bosses, but they're stupid easy. Like even Dracula, the final boss, the Lord of Darkness, is a fucking joke. You can kill him before he even gets a chance to fully wake up. 4, the lag. So this is one of those NES games where the enemies respawn the second you walk off the screen, right? And because the mansions are massive and have multiple floors, so many enemies spawn on screen that the NES literally can't handle it and the game slows way down. Like, guys, work within your limit here. It's 1987, come on. And 5, backtracking. Man, you know what my favorite thing about Final Fantasy or Skyrim or Elden Ring is? How after you clear out an area, you have to walk all the way back through the empty dungeon to get to the exit. Oh wait, none of them do that because that would be fucking stupid and I just lied to you. So yeah, after you finish the mansion, you gotta just walk all the way back through the entire mansion, back the door you came in. Like, just warp me back to the entrance. It's common sense. Overall, the mansions suck. They should have just been like mini Castlevania 1 levels with monsters and a boss at the end. Wowee, those mansions sure were fun. Can you believe that I'm not even finished ripping into this game? Lucky you, right? I already mentioned the nonsensical dialogue, but that's like 1% of what makes this game so fucking confusing. You need a walkthrough to play this game. Like, the white crystal from the first mansion is bad enough, but if you can believe it, it only goes downhill from there. In order to get into the second mansion, you have to find this guy in the one town who will trade you your white crystal for a blue crystal. Then you have to go to this part of the game where there's a big body of water you can't cross, kneel there with the blue crystal equipped for like 10 seconds, and then the screen pans down, allowing you to progress. How would one know to do this? Well, if you break this random block in a random part of the game, a hint appears that says, to replenish Earth, kneel by the lake with the blue crystal. And to be fair, that's one of the most comprehensible hints in the whole game. And there are so many more examples like this, man. It's a fucking nightmare. Equip the red crystal and kneel here so that a tornado can come and transport you to the next level. Equip the heart and talk to the ferryman and he'll take you to the right place. And no one tells you this. You're meant to find hints all over the game and they're, you guessed it, completely nonsensical. And that's Simon's Quest. One of the lowest hanging fruit in the whole fruit museum. But before I go, I got one more thing to talk about. So sit tight, because it's going to be a lot of fun for me. In the far-off, distant past year of 2009, a guy named the Almighty Guru made a ROM hack of Simon's Quest called Simon's Quest Redaction, and it's a significantly better way to play this game. The text scrolling is way faster, the transition between day and night only takes 4 seconds rather than the 10 seconds it takes in the original. And most importantly, all the dialogue is completely rewritten so that you can actually understand what people are telling you. Instead of saying, first thing to do in this town is buy a white crystal, this guy says the white crystal will let you see unseen platforms. And it's awesome, you know? It's cool that nerds raging on the internet about a game from the 80s inspired somebody to actually fix it. But that said, that's all he really fixed. The towns are still huge, you still have to backtrack out of mansions, the bosses are still complete fucking jokes. It's still a very flawed game, and overall I can't recommend playing Simon's Quest in any form. It's a fun game, you know, it's got the same controls and mechanics as the first Castlevania, but the multitude of bullshit in the game just doesn't even come close to making up for it. Honestly, if you want an RPG-style Castlevania with a whip, just play Circle of the Moon on Game Boy Advanced. I mean, it's not perfect, it's still pretty cryptic, but anything's better than Simon's Quest, for Christ's sake. And there you have it, boys and ghouls. Castlevania 2 has been harshly criticized by a white guy on the internet. We can all finally get some peace. Jokes aside, this game really is as bad as everyone says it is. Whipping skeletons is fun, sure, but at what cost? In conclusion, Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, more like Castlevania 2 Simon's